Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. We're here with our lovely hosts.
Charlie.
Layne.
Mary.
And we're here to talk about sport news media. This podcast topic is going to concern media convergence and how it affects contemporary sports journalism and creates greater connection or maybe less connection. We don't know. For our first kind of guiding question here, I like to start with Charlie and ask, where do you get your sports news?
Yeah, so it's changed a lot throughout the years, but recently most of my sports news actually comes from different social media platforms, just like Instagram and TikTok, with just like random posts being added and posted and kind of just sent to me. And it's really transitioned from watching things on TV and watching full news segments and different shows to more short form social media. And then as well as podcasts, it's like podcasts are growing rapidly and have become a primary source of sports news for a lot of people and have been just continuing to grow and allowing almost anyone to be able to show their and voice their opinions about sports and just get news across to as many people as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like I also get mine from like a lot of social media. I feel like I'm on like TikTok and Instagram the most, so I get like clips from like ESPN, like all those type of stuff. And that's like where I mostly like am able to see it all.
Yeah, no, I agree with Charlie and Layne. I definitely, when I was kind of growing up, got like the traditional like ESPN, like radio kind of books and everything. But now we're kind of at the age now where everything I get is like through the social media, the TikTok, the Instagrams. And I think it's really nice and fun to kind of be able to interact too with that because it makes me want to like kind of go and actually like listen and watch sports, especially with like, the interactive part of it now.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I definitely spend way too much time on Instagram. So obviously you're gonna go through a lot of stuff. I usually follow like NBA, F1 are like definitely my two big kind of major professional sports I follow. So I get a lot of stuff from there and from YouTube as well, watching highlights and watching analysis of stuff. And yeah. And for our next question concerning media convergence, how has the landscape of sports journalism changed via new technology, especially since the internet came about in the past like 30, 40 years?
Yeah, I can start with that one. I think sports journalism has become more accessible to almost anyone now. It's become easier than ever to produce your own content and share your own news and opinions about sports. And with the rise of technology, it's giving journalists more responsibilities. Like you're no longer just a writer or just a photographer, but now you have to incorporate all these different forms of media like writing, video editing, recording, and all of these different things. And it's making things, it could be more challenging for the producers of this media, but it's also allowing people to become more well-rounded and better in many different sports news mediums.
Yeah, I agree. It's also opened up like a whole world like for like athletes as well as journalism because like it is like the main source of like news at the moment, especially like within sports. So I think like it also has given like a lot more opportunities to people and like grow their platforms as like individuals.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I think that technology has really like just expanded everything, kind of like what I said before, like the fan involvement too is just super important in like any type of journalism because it keeps people like engaged. and they share clips, they comment, they do all that stuff. And I think it's just really cool to see like how technology kind of like just advances like everything in general. And coming from like an athletic family, I was always just um like I couldn't really like look up to like any players or anything, but now like because we have like the technology to really get to know them behind the scenes, kind of see the interviews, the podcasts. I just think that it kind of brings a whole new meaning to like athletics and like social media coverage.
Yeah. And my take on that question is kind of like um what I remember from what we've read in our COMM 3290 class. There is like 30, 40 years ago, there was kind of this, well, more like 30, 20 years ago. But like there is this discussion around the turn of the century, like how is the internet, is it gonna get more eyes on reporters and journalists? And like how it is, I think there was a lot of anxiety that it would actually kind of de-emphasize their work because it because it was so easy to get stuff across. It just didn't really, like, it was instant for a lot of things and it was very convenient and accessible and not tactile anymore. I think there was some kind of anxiety about that, but I think what's clearly happened is that the inverse of that has happened. And now I think it's hard to not have eyes on some kind of journalist's work and some kind of reporter's work. And I think they actually have more kind of notoriety in society as well, because they're all over the place. Like, I think an example that was used was Brian Windhorst, for ESPN. He's on shows like morning shows like First Take. He's on podcasts. He analyzes games in real time, like during halftime, and he has to write about those, and he has to write about um, not just game updates, but also big like happenings, big trades, big acquisitions, whatever they may be. So he's all over the place, and I think there's a lot of, I think journalists and reporters have actually been raised higher in the past few decades. So yeah. And for our next question, what types of content gives you a stronger connection to a sport, a team, or an athlete?
I think that seeing a lot of like the off the field and like behind the scenes type of content really allows people to connect like with their favorite athletes. And I feel like more and more recently people are seeing athletes as humans and no longer just random people on a field that you watch on TV.
Mm.
And it's really been growing to more people can like feel like they have that connection with their favorite athletes, and seeing them on social media makes it a lot easier to follow along what their life is really like and maybe see things that they have in common with them, and really allows people to feel closer to who they look up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I would say like TikTok, especially like now, is like a more casual form of like social media. So like when athletes or like anyone really gets on TikTok and like starts doing like stuff that like an average person would do, that's like a non-athlete, like it kind of makes that connection for like the fans to be like, oh my gosh, like wait, like this is act like they're actually like kind of like us in a sense, and
Mhm.
it grows that connection. I would say also like more recently podcasts have like been growing popular, and so like athletes like getting on podcasts and kind of just being able to like be like a little bit more unfiltered than they would be like in an interview or something.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's super like refreshing to just be able to see like the human side of that. Like they're not just like athletes, they're like people with emotions. And I think it's just really fun to be able to like what Charlie said, like behind the scenes and stuff like that. Like not even just the interviews, but just the really get to know them, and like the TikToks, and like see the content that they themselves are creating, not so much like their team or something like that. Obviously, because they have like a brand and stuff like that, but kind of just seeing like what goes on behind the scenes is just super fun. And it kind of just really lets you know like they're just there having a good time playing the sport that they love, doing what they love. And it's just really like refreshing to see that.
Yeah. Usually when I think like like what content makes it a stronger connection is like stuff you'll see on Instagram that's like, oh, it's and like one example was like, um usually when they like, oh, they're the teammates, athletes are coming to practice or something, and they have them, they have like the PR people will have like signs up like asking like dumb like but like silly like fun social media questions. So it's like which way would a giraffe wear its pants on all four or just the back two? And I was like, I was watching like Kevin Durant try and like nonchalant answer that. I'm like, he's just like me. So that is like that's like one example where it's like it's just yeah, like you said, like all you kind of said, it's just like it's all it's fun to see them kind of go through not like placed on this huge pedestal like they're the athletes, they're like gods or something. Like, yeah, I couldn't possibly do that. I think it seems just more connected than ever.
So kind of going back to the parasocial relationships, so my dad was a professional tennis player, and kind of growing up, I was able to see like um him trying to separate his athletic life versus his like family life. And obviously he went to a lot of interviews and he had like a lot of meetings and everything when I was growing up. And he always kind of told me that because of like the technology, like it's so much easier for him to like not necessarily like fan mail or like fan behavior, but be able to like reach out to people and like kind of like become like coaches because he also coaches tennis on the side. I just thought that was also like just very interesting because I feel like parasocial relationships are kind of they kind of have a negative connotation to them, but kind of in his experience, it's kind of been like a positive one. And he's always said that technology has been really helpful in actually being able to kind of get out his story because he played in the 80s and the 90s. So kind of when tennis wasn't as big of a thing, you know, before the Nadals and the
Mhm.
Federers and everything. And I just thought that was a really good point, and especially in tying in the relationships and like the social media.
Yeah. That and you noted that there was kind of like a usually a negative connotation as well. And that like for some reason it like made me think of like guys who get like mad at people. Like they bet on like John Morant to have like these many points today, and he like decided he like almost got it, but the whistle blew, and he was like, he didn't like finish the bucket. And then these guys are like raging in front of the TV as if it's like Jaw's fault that they didn't win, even though it's like I at some point I think there's clearly like there's good and bad. I think you pointed out the good. Um, but it is definitely an interesting conversation to have because there's people that are like it's almost like they have too much control or they believe they have too much control. Um, and they want
Yeah.
to kind of influence the game or
Yeah.
in their kind of way. So, does anyone
Yeah,
else?
one thing to kind of go off of that is like another aspect of like the negative effects of people feeling almost too connected to athletes is you see a lot with NFL kickers, I feel like. And people are like, if that kicker misses a field goal, they're sending them death
That was
threats
bad.
and saying all these crazy things that they think that don't really have an impact on them. But now you're really seeing, I've seen several interviews of NFL kickers after games talking about how they're sick and tired of people saying all these harsh things and sending threats to them and their families. And
Hmm.
I think that I think parasocial relationships definitely have benefits of like feeling closer to their favorite athletes, but there's definitely a line that some people cross and feel almost too comfortable saying things to these athletes and not seeing them as people, but strictly only athletes.
Yeah.
No, yeah, definitely. And like I feel like since social media, like the rise of social media, like especially it's like hard for like these young athletes, I would say, to kind of escape those like what everyone's saying online. Like I feel like you're so involved in social media now that like maybe the older athletes like they may not like take it in as much, but like the younger athletes they definitely like it's hard for them to escape because they open their phone and like they can see like what everyone says about them. So I
Mhm.
do feel like there's like some positives and then there's like definitely like those negatives that like will like affect like mental health on like athletes and take a toll.
Yeah, I remember seeing some clip a couple of days ago of some basketball team where they had an older player on the team and then a younger player on the team, and the younger player was saying how he would check his phone at halftime and see people sending tweets about him and how they needed him to score more points to hit their bets, and then the
Mhm.
older athlete was saying how like in his day and age growing up, like that wasn't even like a thought of doing anything like that or like didn't even have an impact, but just with the rise of social media, it's creating these new problems that weren't there 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like it's definitely putting like weight on like athletes now. Like they're not just doing it for themselves, but like they also have to like prove like to these like fans now that they can like do their like sport and stuff and like they have to perform well.
Mhm. Definitely. Well, I think we touched on a lot of good aspects of this topic, and I think we're ready to bring in our next guest. So, guys, our next guest is Will Loggia. He is a graduate from Boston University, getting his master's of management and hospitality. Also ran D1 track and cross country at BU. He's interviewed major athletes, represented sports outlets at meets nationwide, and recently founded and hosts his own podcast, The Kick, a runner's podcast. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the introduction. How are you guys?
And great. Thank
Awesome.
you for being our first guest of our podcast. Very exciting.
It's an honor. It's an honor.
I'll start with a question. So we've seen like a lot of changes and growth in like the sports news world. And what do you think the biggest changes have been so far? And where do you like see this entire industry heading into like the future?
Well, this is probably a pretty common answer, but I think it's true. The social media aspect of everything has kind of changed the whole game. At least from my perspective, being in a world where doing a lot of like reporting on specifically track and field media, it has a lot of people who are older who don't like the social media aspect of it. And all the younger people coming in are like very focused on content, how it's going to look on TikTok, Instagram, and it's less so about getting quotes to use in articles now, and it's a lot more about trying to get that 7 to 10 second clip of some
Mhm.
viral quote that somebody says.
Yeah, with that last kind of part, like kind of tying into like sensationalism, I feel like there's just in I guess in media in general is like kind of like clip farming, like how do you get that thing that's just gonna go viral, but at the end of the day, like what are you really reporting or reporting on? Like it seems to be like pretty hollow. How do you uh what I guess what are your views on that and maybe how can it be mitigated?
Yeah, well, it's tough. It can be a little bit almost sad when you're a part of it because nobody really, I think, wants to be someone who is clip farming or just asking questions just to get a response that's going to do well on social media. But then when you're in it, like I'll definitely admit I've had times where I'm like trying to ask that question because for me, a lot of my jobs have been based on like my payment would be based on how many views something got, or
Mm,
it would be, I would have incentives unlocked based on how many views a clip got. So it's like you can't help but operate from a place of kind of hoping that somebody says something that could go viral. But I think at the end of the day, the thing that does best is usually based on the athlete. So you could have a relatively boring athlete who, like, not a lot of people know. If they say something crazy, it's still probably not gonna like do
mm,
that well. But if you have a really well-known athlete who's, I don't know, breaking records or is just very well known already, they might say something boring, but then that does really well just because the athlete is usually what sells the content. So I think that's an intriguing aspect because it does go to show that it's still about, the athletes being, somebody who's either inspirational or controversial, and that's usually what's going to do well.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, one more thing to kind of go off of where everything's heading into the future. Do you think that like the responsibilities for people working in sports news has and all the expectations have grown now that they're not expected to specialize in one industry, but now they're kind of expected to like broaden their expertise into multiple fields?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You see things go viral every now and then that make you think about that question. I think it was a couple months ago. There was a moment on the field after a football game, and Justin Herbert kind of wanted to celebrate with his team, and there was a reporter who was kind of asking like, "Hey, could we just get a question real quick?" And I don't know. I think there were people on both sides. Some people thinking like, "Oh, like he's being so rude. Like, why didn't he just take the question?" But then it's also like, I mean, athletes know when you have a moment like that and you win a big game, like the last thing you want to do is talk to the media. You want to celebrate with your team. So I think um, having been an athlete myself, not at that level, obviously, but I can relate a little bit to that. So I think it has kind of helped guide me when I'm on the media side of things and when I'm on the reporting side of things to kind of know, like how the athlete might be feeling right now, and if they'd be willing or even like ready to do something like that in front of a camera right now. So I think, yeah, there's definitely a lot of skills that reporters would benefit from having, but I think one of the main things is just being able to put yourself in the athlete's shoes and think like, okay, like,
Hmm.
is this something that they would want to do right now, and kind of evaluate from there.
I
So
kind of have a question. Oh, sorry.
you
Charlie, you
go,
can
you
go
go.
ahead. I guess just kind of like being an athlete and kind of working in the media coverage, and you said um kind of going back to like the clip farming, I guess you would have you ever like yourself kind of been in that situation where someone is trying to like get that out of you and you're just kind
Mhm.
of you're just kind of like, wow, I don't really know. But I guess you said that you've been in the same like shoes as the person trying to clip farm. So I guess that's kind of like my question, kind of how like the different like how the experience was like for the both of them.
Hmm.
That's a super interesting question. I think for me, I was never being interviewed maybe at a scale where it was like meant to go viral on social media. I have been interviewed after races and after wins before, and I think it always generally, at least from my perspective, felt like this was a very genuine interview with just like somebody who wanted to share, oh, this person won this race, and like I get to share my story a little bit. And that's always what it felt like to me. So hopefully, on the other side of things, when I'm interviewing people, they feel that way too, that, I'm just, I have their best interest in mind. And that's something that I always like to focus on because I feel like I've been in, the mixed media zone where there's like 20 people all holding up cameras to this athlete and all, asking them questions. And I always like to be like the one person, or maybe not the one person, hopefully other people are doing this too, but somebody who's always asking questions that they're gonna receive well. Something like not necessarily always softballs, but things that aren't gonna throw them off, aren't gonna make them feel uncomfortable. I guess there can be a time and place for that, but I always felt like I'd leave that to the other reporters. And something for me, like I started doing this when I was still a college student, so a lot of the athletes, like some of them were older than me, a lot of them were right around my age. So it was kind of this factor of relatability where it's like they would see me as like, oh, this kid's like a college kid. Like I'd wear my BU gear to like kind of signal like, look, like I'm just like you. Like, and there were people there who were like 65 years old reporting, and nothing against them. Like some of them are like seasoned veterans, like total pros. But again, like I think it's just harder for the athlete to relate to that. So yeah, it's a great question though. I like I said, I never was interviewed at a scale where I probably had to worry about it, but
Hmm.
good thing to think about.
Kind of going off of that, I feel like one big change that I've been seeing a lot in like the sports news world is like the increase of personal questions and trying to like humanize the athletes. And I've noticed a lot in your interviews, you like to ask the more creative and personable questions. And how important is it to create those parasocial relationships where like the fans can really like, connect and like feel connected to their favorite athletes?
Oh, it's such a great topic. I'm fascinated by it myself. One thing that like sticks out in my mind immediately when you talk about that is a current athlete in the NCAA right now in the running world. He runs for Villanova. His name's Marco Langan. I know Charlie and I like kind of know him because we both ran in New Jersey in high school, where this guy went to high school. But I mean, this guy is producing some of the most controversial viral clips in running media right now. He like just has developed this reputation as somebody who is not afraid to talk, and like a lot of people in the running world are very reserved and they're very like nice about their competitors and they're very kind of polite, and he's the opposite of all those things. And I think it's something that everybody looks for every time they see a Marco Langen clip on Instagram. Now they're like, oh,
Mm.
what's he going to say this time? Like there's going to be some like trash talk, there's going to be some controversy. And I was just with him a week ago, and it's funny because off camera he's not like that at all, and you can just talk about whatever with him, and then you're like, all right, like let's get a clip here, and then immediately he turns it on and he's suddenly like talking trash, and it's super interesting. And he knows that there's people out there who are yeah, have this parasocial relationship, and he's built this kind of brand for himself, and I think it's admirable for him because it doesn't always put him in the best light, but yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Um, I was wondering if you have any like, is there like a specific, like when you think about like kind of like how you got your, not big breaks, but like your big stories or your big interviews, what was really the kind of recipe? Like what made it, and what on your part made it like either like got it the certain amount of eyes on it and the engagement, what really, what techniques really push that?
Yeah, super interesting. I think I have a lot of fun analyzing that because before I'll post a clip or before I'll ask a question, even, I always kind of have a feeling like, oh, this is going to be something that's going to resonate, or this is kind of a boring one. And then almost 99% of the time I'm wrong, and like the things that you don't expect to do well, and vice versa. Um, but for me, I started doing this at a place where track and field is kind of inherently very popular. So I went to Boston University, was an athlete there, but our indoor track meets at BU are some of the biggest in the world, which not a lot of people know. I didn't even like really expect it to be the magnitude it was when I decided to go to BU. But world records go down at our track every year, American records, just it's one of the tracks where like the most people in the world have broken 4 minutes in the mile. Like all these major things happen on our track, so it's like automatic good content for running media. So I kind of started there as somebody who likes doing social media and video content, and one of the bigger media companies in the running world, Sidious Mag, they reached out and had me do my first gig at BU doing interviews there. And right out of the gates, I had a lot of interviews do really well. A few that stood out to me that first time were Craig Angles. He's like a Nike professional runner who just has a really fun personality, and everybody loves him. And I was doing the interview with him, and as we were interviewing, there was a line of people to get his autograph, like building, and I was like, "Man, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be doing this interview right now because all these people are waiting to get his signature," which was pretty cool because you don't see that too often in the running world. But yeah, I'd say big break, our BU meets were great for that. So being in Boston was just naturally a break for me.
Hmm.
And then probably the one that I'm like most famous for in the running media world would be Parker Valby. She just, anytime I interviewed her, which was a lot because she was always winning, those interviews just went crazy viral, which was, I mean, I think that really was not any thanks to me in particular, but just like she's a very popular runner in the space right now, and she also was breaking collegiate records. So when you have that combination of popularity and success on the track, it's kind of hard not to go viral. So
Yeah, and also you like mentioned like what track and cross country is for BU, it's like football is for Clemson. Like if you want to write about football, that's huge here. But if you want to write about maybe lacrosse, it's not going to go as well just because it's just not even, it's not one of the big like three or four picked up sports, especially here, although I think they're doing pretty well. But it makes me think like how important now with how you can work remotely so many ways. How important is location for someone that wants to be a sports reporter or sports journalist?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Obviously, you can do everything remote in a way right now, but I've still learned that as like a reporter in the sports world, you kind of want to be at the game or at the event, at the meet, because yeah, things really happen like right then, like the second somebody crosses the finish line, like you've got, reporters going up to them, like it's that's the moment you want to be there. And I think it's interesting. One thing I didn't necessarily realize before, kind of like being a part of um, that side of things was that when you go on Instagram and see, oh, like this person ran this race and has like their result, and maybe it was like a world record or an NCAA record and has their name and a picture of them crossing the finish line. Like at the event, people are really fighting for that picture. And if like you don't have a photographer who is your brand's like, freelance photographer for that day, you're going to have a really hard time getting a picture and a graphic up in time. So it's like you'd have maybe 10 photographers all trying to get the same picture, and they're all representing different running media companies or just sports media companies. And then it's like this mad race to get their picture up and send it to their like social media team to make a post. And then it's the same thing with the interviews after the race. Everybody's recording the interviews and then trying to get clips of it to go on social media. And it's wild. So it's very competitive on site. And I think if you are solely remote, it would be very hard to compete with coverage. I mean, you can write articles, you can do things like that, but without the content at the event, I think it would be very difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you think that because the field has become so competitive that that's one of like the reasons people are kind of spreading out their content into like multiple different fields? Like I know you recently started your podcast, and is that like one of the reasons why you might branch out and try to take advantage of other platforms and not compete in an oversaturated field?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting dilemma because for me, I've worked for two kind of main brands in the sports media space, both running media, Sirius Mag, like I mentioned earlier, and a company called the Stride Report. And they're both great, doing similar things. But one tough thing in the running media space is that, there's very few full-time jobs like at those companies. Even though they're, successful companies, they're generally paying on a more like freelance base or project base. So it's definitely difficult to, 100% hone in on something like that. For me, I did it mostly as a student, so it was the perfect kind of gig to go along with being a student athlete. But post college now, I graduated less than a year ago, and starting something like the Kick on my own is definitely something I wanted to try to see. Like, look, I know kind of what works in the running media space, and I really enjoy it. I like being a part of it. So this will be a way, to make sure that it's still a part of what I'm doing as I look to some, more full-time positions. And it's tough because like I feel like everybody that I know in the industry wishes that there were more opportunities for full-time work. But in the running media space, it is definitely tough. And I don't think that is the case for a lot of other more popular sports. So it's definitely interesting.
One last quick thing. As a avid listener of your own personal podcast, I know you like to finish all your podcasts with some rapid fire questions. So I think it's only appropriate for me to ask you some. If
No
you
way.
are up for the challenge.
I'm up for the challenge. I've actually thought about this before. I was like, I would love to be on, the answering end of a rapid fire questions, but now, yeah, this is my chance.
So I've got some questions. So, what is your favorite sports news media outlet?
ESPN,
Favorite person you have interviewed?
Craig Angles.
Favorite motivational or inspirational quote?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Dream guest on your podcast?
Usain Bolt.
That'd be pretty cool. One mistake you made early in your career that you have learned from?
Mm, trying to be perfect.
Favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
And then last one, just a random, of course, not specifically tailored for you, but favorite Rolling Stone song?
Oh, Wild Horses.
Thank you.
Great questions, man. Some of them stumped me a bit. I cringed saying ESPN, but it's just that's the one that I'm bombarded with the most. Nothing against ESPN, they're great, but I wish I had a better pick.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely the powerhouse and
Yeah.
the first thing that pops up in your head when you think of sports news media.
Yeah.
Or Will, if you'd like to shout out any of your social
Yeah.
media or podcasts for people at home.
Yeah, for people at home. So yeah, I recently started a running podcast called The Kick, a runner's podcast. Definitely tune in, check it out. We have some fun on there. And then yeah, I'm on Instagram. I have a personal page for YouTube. I'm always doing content, having a great time with it. And if you really, really dig back deep, you might find Charlie Stock in some of the old videos. So.
Yes.
Nice.
Appreciate it though. Love what you guys are doing.
Yes,
Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
for your time.
This concludes episode 1 of Tigers Unmuted. If you enjoyed this episode, tune in next time for new topics and new guests within the world of sport news media. Thanks for listening.